So this is stillness flowing. It's page 533. Everything okay? Yeah. All right. So I'm going to invite you to take a comfortable position. And bring your attention to your breathing. Relax. Aware of your body and how your body feels at this time. Not trying to change anything, but just to be present. Feel your breath coming in and going out. Bring some attention to your thoughts. Again, just allowing the mind to be as it is at this moment. Relaxing. Noticing any emotions that are present. Just really settling in. Breathing in happily, breathing out happily. Breathing in relaxed. Breathing out relaxed. I'm going to read this passage to you, and you can just observe your breath and let the words sink in or drift by, or however you want to attend without any stress, just relaxed and at ease. Over the years, many Western lay people came to stay at Wat Pah Pong. A large number arrived without any intention of becoming monks or nuns, but simply with the wish to meet and receive teachings from Luang Por, and to participate for some time in the life of the monastic community. Usually, Luang Por would delegate basic teaching duties to senior Western monks. But every now and again, he would give a Dhamma talk to the lay guests or answer their questions. It is sometimes alleged that monks are dismissive of lay practice, and that great masters reserve the most profound teachings for those who have made a commitment to monastic life. This was not the case with Luang Por. Western lay guests with a sincere interest in practice energized him. Indeed, monks would become excited if they knew that Luang Por was going to give a Dhamma talk to the foreign lay guests, because of the profundity of the Dhamma that they might expect to hear. One talk, subsequently published as Living with a Cobra, gives a good idea of the flavor of these teachings. In it, Lungpa compared mental states, both positive and negative, to poisonous snakes. Identifying with a mental state, he said, was like letting yourself be bitten by a cobra. The separation from the truth of things that results from that identification is like death from the cobra's poison. These are words from Ajahn Chah. All mental states are like cobras. If nothing obstructs their path, they just glide along their way. Even though they possess venom, it's inside them. They are of no danger to us as long as we don't go near them. They just do what cobras naturally do. Intelligent people let go of attachment to everything, both good and bad. They let go of both what they like and what they dislike. It's as if we were to release a cobra from captivity. It would slither away, taking its poison with it. And that is the way we release mental states. We release the good and bad with an awareness of their nature. We don't touch them, don't take hold of them, because we don't want anything. And we don't want good or bad, heavy or light, pleasure or pain. A conclusion is reached, and lucid calm is firmly established. He taught that the path of practice was founded on the development of mindfulness and alertness. When these two factors are mature, the wisdom faculty would naturally arise, and meditators would then be wakeful day and night. Practitioners would be close to the Buddha at all times. The term arising of wisdom means that through clearly seeing how all phenomena arise and fall according to causes and conditions, meditators abandon attachment to them as self or adjuncts to self. When things arise, we know. This is also from Ajahn Chah. When things arise, we know. When they cease, we know. When there is happiness, we know. And when there is unhappiness, we know. Once we know, we don't take possession of that happiness or unhappiness. When there is no sense of possession of those feelings, then all that remains is a simple process of arising and ceasing. You let it follow its natural course because there's nothing there worth attaching to. I think I'll stop there and we'll just use that as our guide in this meditation. So I don't know if that was any different from your normal meditation approach, but or if you used it. But does anybody have any comments or questions at this point? Get all nice, relaxed, and I asked you to talk. You don't have to do anything if you don't want to. So, in looking at this section, and it seems very simple, right? You know, don't attach to any mental states, don't attach to thoughts. You just one way that I guess Ajahn Chah talked about this, and I've heard various students of his say, just know and let go. You know what's coming up in the mind and you let it go. You know what's coming up in the body, you let it go. You know what emotions arise and you just let it go. And the simile of seeing it as a snake in the house, you know, if you don't mess with it and it slides back out, you don't have a problem. It would be hard not to get excited though, wouldn't it? Of course, if we're not living in kutis in the jungle, you get a little more used to it there. I think I would find it still pretty compelling to hang on to it. And then, of course, we have a lot of opportunity to practice with this because, you know, our minds are dealing with all kinds of input all the time, whether it's external through the senses or through the mind and the conditioning that we have in the things that have happened to us before and the way we think, our patterns. And we have a lot of opportunity to practice, you know, how can I put this down? And for many people, this past week has been a real challenge in terms of letting go of our thoughts. And it's been a really, for everybody I know, there's nothing we can really do to change anything. So it's a perfect kind of practice opportunity, whether we like it or we don't like it, is a perfect practice opportunity to practice letting it go. Yes, Elizabeth.
I have a question about not grabbing onto the liked or the disliked. So, you know, sometimes the practice, there's a lot of effort in it. Not always, but there's effort involved. So then when something very pleasant arises, I feel like almost that it's important that I kind of allow that in, you know, I need the buoyancy to keep, so that I have the energy to keep going through the stuff that isn't so pleasant. So that's, I mean, I understand attaching to anything is dukkha, but that piece of it, you know, like, when do I get a break here? That's the question I have.
This is a really good point because I think what Ajahn Chah is talking about here is really our likes and dislikes. You know, the pleasant and unpleasant, like sensations or whatever. I want to make a distinction here because the Buddha really encouraged us to bring up pleasant spiritual feeling. And that's different from pleasant sensual feeling. So it's you know, like, oh, I like the color blue, or I like the feeling of this carpet beneath my feet. It's different from the kind of feelings that arise when there's like relaxation and contentment, when our mind is settling, and that wonderful feeling, that's the break we want. And so we do, the Buddha really encouraged us to see the difference, to really notice what is, sort of sensual, pleasant feeling, and what is spiritual, pleasant feeling. And I think probably everyone here can feel and identify the difference. But that's the break. And so, like, just during this little meditation for myself, there was a lot of really lovely, peaceful feeling that was coming from the meditation, not from sense input or thought. And the Buddha himself, shortly before he became enlightened, said to himself, why am I afraid of this pleasant feeling that doesn't have anything to do with sensuality? And that's actually was the doorway for him to awaken. So that's the answer. It's like, okay, making that distinction, seeing that difference. And of course we put in effort also, the right kind, the right amount to help us relax. If we're trying too hard, of course, then there's too much. But, we want to have enough effort to put our mind on our meditation object and be able to use that as a way to become relaxed, calm, peaceful, let the mind really settle, the body settle. It's appropriate effort.
And I think that's what I'm asking, is if I understand the difference. If the goodwill and ease is not coming from the wholesome and the letting go, that's where the mind starts looking for
sensual pleasure.
Yeah, some kind of relief. Because if the practice, like Ajahn Brahm, he just sits down and he's in bliss. Well,
not every time, I understand, but probably often enough.
So if that were the case for me, I wouldn't be looking anywhere else. But that's not the case. I mean, so that's the point at which I think, I know the difference. I know wholesome pleasures, both wholesome sensual pleasures and wholesome spiritual pleasures. But I understand that the real liberation is only going to the spiritual contentment. But I'm not there.
So do you ever use the things that you might say are kind of half and half, like nature, for example? And you see the rejoicing in nature in the suttas, particularly the poetry of the enlightened monks. And that kind of like, okay, you take it in through your senses, but it has an uplift to the heart that can really be energizing and kind of give us a boost on that stretch. Are there any other kinds of sort of halfway?
Could I kind of connect with that?
Yeah.
Because I also, when I'm feeling good, what I've started to do is notice that I'm feeling good, and then I try to turn it in, like, where is the heart energy coming from? Because often it'll sink a little bit deeper, like into a sort of a metta, or just to realize that I'm feeling love.
Yeah.
So is that like a good avenue to kind of translate the more superficial into what's really underneath, which is really our heart?
Yes, the heart energy, and using the Brahma Viharas. So, using that method of developing metta, loving kindness, where you're imagining someone in front of you that you really love. And, there's the love we have that has its attachments, and then there's the shifting to an unattached love, like where you can, it's really not sticky at all. And that's the metta, it's like there's no real stickiness, there's no clinging there.
I think for me it's hard to recognize sometimes when I'm feeling love. That's why I'm trying to like pay a little more attention, like, oh, maybe this, subtle kind of warm feeling or generous feeling or whatever. I'm just trying to learn what love actually feels like when it doesn't feel like Hollywood love.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like the hormones are behind it or something. Yeah. Yeah, it's really beautiful that the path unfolds through peace, that has such a comforting, supportive, wonderful feeling about it. I mean, and that there are so many different flavors to the joy of spiritual practice.
I like that helps the path unfolds through peace, which I kind of knew, but I didn't have words for it, because even if I don't have that contentment or peace during formal practice, I can just take a walk.
Yes.
And not try anything.
Yes.
And, then, because I do recognize that the heart has to be, the path is through peace. There's not going to be any kind of anything, any good result unless the heart is somewhat settled. And so that opened up, that was helpful.
Yeah. Anybody else want to say anything?
Well, I was thinking that when I'm not attached, when I know that if I'm feeling pretty okay, and it's not an attachment, and I do know it's going to change, then that's how I feel things. For example, when I walk into this room, it is definitely an aura, and there's definitely a sense of peace, and I can be with that. The moment my mind puts a story to that, and says, "Oh, this is something that I want to go on tomorrow, or
Right.
I want it to last." I think knowing that kind of difference. But the other thought that I have is that this human form that we're in, we have chemical reactions. We know that we're studying more about the brain and what's going on with the brain, and that we can enter a space and know and have a physical chemical reaction to things.
Yeah.
And so I also look at that, and it's a very natural thing. It's not something that I have to dismiss. It just is. As I age, I can sense there's certain things in that aging stage that are going to have a reaction that I didn't have 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot going on just in this physical form.
Yes. And I think that's why the Buddha said we can learn everything we need to know through this physical form, through the body. And hello, Daniel.
Hello.
Welcome. And it's true, and we can have these reactions to what's happening, and these reactions in the body, and the mind be observing that from a place of calm. Or maybe the mind gets caught up in it, and then you can see that, and you can actually encourage the mind towards peace and calm.
Yeah.
And even though the body's, having its natural reactions. It's like when we started the meditation, that idea, and you're all familiar with it, this is nothing new, of being present with these different aspects, like our physical body, like our thoughts and our emotions, and being present with it and not trying to change anything, but just aware. It's a kind of generosity, it's a kind of kindness to ourselves that at least my experience, and I think I'm definitely not alone in this, it's like when we really allow it, and yet there's that wisdom looking on, then the whole thing begins to settle. It's like, oh, I don't have to fight for my existence here. I can just relax. And so I think that all of these ways of working with the body and the mind that lead towards more peace, this is going to be helpful. This is going to help us recognize, well, what is the way forward here to real to real awakening, to peace and relaxation that brings about creates the opening for wisdom to arise. I'm just going to go on. Oh, yes, you want to say something?
I ever share. I had something really distressing and strange happen just before leaving here.
Okay.
Leaving for here, and I asked Mayor for some support as we were walking, and just her presence was really helpful. And what really surprised me is how still my mind became while we were meditating, and I could just see the breath going back and forth, back and forth. I often have a great deal of difficulty getting to that place. And there was nothing challenging about it. It was just peaceful and just there.
Nice.
So I just feel blessed and I feel a sense of possibility.
Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Good. Wonderful. So to continue the reading, it says, at this time, Luang Por had been reading Zen Buddhist texts and gave his own view on the relationship between Nibbana and Samsara discussed in them. And this is one thing that he said. The Buddha said that Nibbana is cessation. Where does that cessation take place? Well, it's like a fire. It's extinguished wherever it springs up, wherever it's burning. You cool something at the point where it's hot. It's the same with Nibbana and Samsara. They lie in the same place. The Buddha taught us to put out the fire of Samsara, that is, inner turmoil. Bringing inner turmoil to cessation is called putting out the fire. External fires are hot, and when they've been put out, there is coolness. The inner heat of greed, hatred, and delusion are also fires. Think about it. When sexual desire arises in the mind, it's hot, isn't it? If anger arises, it's hot. If delusion arises, it's hot. It's this heat which the Buddha called, quote, the fires. When fires spring up, there is heat, and when they're extinguished, there's coolness. Nibbana is the state that cools the heart. The Buddha called it peace, the cessation of the wheel of birth and death. When this is Ajahn Jayasaro again, then at the end of the discourse, Luang Por descended from the exalted level in which he had been dwelling to address some warm personal words to the elderly English woman who was the recipient of this talk. So he probably got down off the high asana chair where you deliver the Dhamma Talk. And he said to her, when you first arrived, you cried. When I saw your tears, I felt happy. Why is that? Because I knew you were going to be studying the true Dhamma. If no tears flow, then you won't see the Dhamma, because the fluid in tears is bad stuff. You have to let it all out before you can feel at ease. So please take this Dhamma away with you and put it into practice. Practice in order to transcend suffering, die before death, and be peaceful and at ease. So how do you relate to that? Do you think of the tears that way? Yeah?
Yes, the toxins have to come out.
The toxins are coming out.
For the purification. I always used to, when I would walk into Spirit Rock, come through the gate, start crying.
Oh.
Last time, no, because they weren't testing for COVID. I was pissed off about that.
Oh. It's a little harder when you're angry.
3 of the 5 teachers got COVID while I was on that retreat.
Wow. Yeah, it's not gone, is it?
No.
When was that?
October. With Matthew. It was a really great retreat. It's a wonderful retreat. 10 days.
Did a lot of other people get COVID, or do they know?
No, one yogi, 2 other yogis left, but they didn't say why. But 3 teachers out of 5.
Wow.
In the summer, I got into Amaro's retreat. It's the lottery, got in. So, 4 or 5 years of COVID, nothing. So I go to the retreat and check in. I'm the only person out of over 100 people. I tested negative for COVID. So I couldn't go on the retreat.
You mean positive?
I mean, tested positive.
Oh, wow.
Which is negative.
It's a very negative thing to have happen. Were you very sick?
No, I didn't even know I had it.
Yeah.
I thought I was having a little asthma.
I thought don't we have to that day, within
Not
24 hours
anymore.
test?
Not
You don't have
anymore.
to do it anymore.
That's
Right,
why
they stopped.
That's
after
why I was so
summer.
pissed off. I sat on the
Well,
side of the
they've renewed it though.
But I was on the last retreat, one of them
Yeah.
where they tested.
I know the nuns retreat and the New Year retreat we've got to test.
No, not this new one.
For Spirit Rock?
No,
It's not true.
applicant.
Oh, Applegate. Yeah,
Wow, I
I'm talking
misread
about,
that.
I'm talking about
I
Spirit
misread
Rock.
it too. I thought we had to.
Oh,
I thought we
really?
had
I
to.
thought
Maybe
they
you need to
said,
reread it.
oh, okay, I misread it, sorry.
Good.
Uh-oh, we lost our screen.
Oh, what happened there?
Um,
Maybe
And
We
the
have
COVID.
cord, is the cord,
But
is
we
the
don't
cord
have to-
hooked on the
have to-
chair? Maybe it got a little
We have to
bump.
test before we go?
Yeah.
The day, like that day?
I think so.
It's usually 24 hours.
Oh, but they don't want it there.
No.
Within 24 hours.
Power
But if you
cord in.
arrive,
Uh-oh,
and
I'm going on and
they'll
off
test
here.
you.
Oh, that's
Oh,
because
yeah,
it's
yeah.
trying to.
Okay, I
Sorry, we've
misread
got a
it.
little technical
That one's still working.
glitch here. Here, let's make sure it's in here. Yeah.
it's in good. Hold on, I'll turn it off when I'm on the TV. Hold on. There we go.
There it is.
Maybe it turned itself off. Maybe there's a timer.
Oh, that's a possibility.
There we go.
Okay.
Here it is.
They want to see you.
Oh, because we're not
Make sure
watching
everybody's
TV.
I wonder if we can probably put gallery view on here. Sorry, I didn't think of this before. Okay.
That's fine. Oh, there's Eve.
Oh, there's Eve.
Hi, Eve. And Shrimani. Okay, welcome.
Were you the only one who missed it,
The only one out
Oh,
of over
that's
100.
horrible, Daniel.
Too bad.
I won't
Sorry,
say
Daniel.
anything more because it just make you feel bad.
Well, I'm hoping I can apply next year. I can go, hey, I've paid for the deposit and everything. Maybe you can let me in on the monastic retreats.
Yeah. Good luck.
We never know, do we?
And Ajahn Amaro had been here the first Tuesday, a few days before that. And when he left, he's like, see you on the retreat, kind of bowing. You never know.
You never know.
So the Thursday night Sangha has resumed over there twice a month with James.
Oh, it has?
Yeah, just
Okay.
last month.
Okay, because it was online for a
Right.
very long
So
time.
it's still online, but they're
Okay.
doing like a hybrid.
Oh, okay.
What did you just say?
Thursday night at the monastery, it used to be James Baraz, now it's James and Eve Decker, and apparently twice a month they're going to be over at the
thank
monastery. Remember the monastery we used to go to with Ayya and Nanda Bodhi and
Yeah, Berkeley Buddhist
remember that
Monastery.
days?
Well, the monks were here by coincidence, election day, first Tuesday. So
Right.
the monks it was great to hang out with the monks on election day.
Yeah.
And I know there would be a lot of questions like, well, you guys are kind of apolitical. What's the deal? And the deal is to stay here, stay home, stay here. It's right here.
Paula?
Yeah, I wanted to speak a little bit about Ajahn Brahm's book. I didn't read the last 2 chapters, but I read 8 and 9. And first of all, I've really been spending some time thinking about virtues, samadhi, and wisdom, which he starts chapter 8 about, and I feel like the deeper I go into my meditation, I feel like it is really seeping into my daily life, which is really lovely. And so my question actually has to do more with meditation, because I feel like he's like always like you're a horse and he's got this carrot dangling in front of you. You know, right? Like, you're going to get this and you're going to get that and you get the other. But every once in a while, the chapter does talk really specifics, and that's what I like. And I wanted to talk a little bit about when he was talking about letting go. Um, and I was really happy to read that section because um, I started noticing in my meditation how I was really striving
Yeah.
for something, and letting go of the desire for bliss he talks about, and just kind of relaxing and noticing tiny bits of pleasure has really helped me. But I still have sort of trouble with the idea of letting go, that whole idea of letting go, even like getting to the point in your meditation where you're um, just noticing the mind as such and then just going deeper. And I wondered if you could talk to that,
Yeah.
letting go.
Well, first of all, though, it's really tricky, and Ajahn Brahm says this to himself that, he's trying to describe how deeper meditation is, and of course, there's this tendency in us to want to get it. And that idea of I want to get something truncates our practice. It's not, we can't get there that way. It has to be through letting go.
Mm.
And it's a challenge because, Ajahn Brahmali, when I was in Australia last year, Ajahn Brahmali said that he really wanted to live with Ajahn Brahm and study with him because he was the most encouraging teacher he had found, someone who was really encouraging you to go into deeper states. And yet there is this side effect that, people start really trying to get somewhere. Or, and Ajahn Brahm said, when people start, like at the retreat, oh, I got this kind of mental state, I got a nimitta, I got the jhana, or whatever, and, or I didn't, that's a real barrier to deepening meditation. It's not the point. So the point being, the more we let go, the more opportunity there is for wisdom to arise. And when you have that in the mind, like here, yes, I want to put in the causes and conditions through my virtue, um, through my consistency of practice, through my connecting with other people, like the description of like how calming it was to come in here and meditate together. That can be a real help to practice together, for example. And other factors that help us to become more peaceful, more calm, and really let go. That those are really supportive, and we see that we put in those causes and conditions, but then learn how to relax. And we all have different characters, and we all have different conditioning. And for some people, it's a lot easier to relax than for others. And for some people, relaxing means going to sleep. And we have to look at that, and how does it feel to relax into peace and bright, clear mindfulness? It's like there's a presence there that is part of that relaxation, part of that peacefulness. There's an uplift there. And so it's, all of our practice is like learning. We're learning what what is that groove? What is that way of orienting ourselves? What does it feel like to let go? We can use all kinds of examples of it, not just in meditation. You know, when you're really trying to solve a problem, or there's something going on in your life that's difficult to accept, and then noticing what happens when we actually accept it. I gotta say, once the election results came in, I really relaxed. Go figure.
4 years we've been wondering what's going to happen. Now we know.
Well, there is something about that, you know. I mean, there's something about certainty, of like understanding what's really the outcome that can help bring some sense of calm, and then some idea of, well, what do I do now? What can I do now to help things go in the right direction, go in a direction in favor of peace and kindness and goodwill and truthfulness and all of those things that we know are important. And so it's like there's all kinds of examples of when we feel that letting go feeling, when we feel that relative peacefulness, and to notice it. It's like, oh, you know, how did that come about? So when the Buddha was practicing for awakening, as we know, he was constantly looking at cause and effect. Like, you know, like, oh, you know, what is it that was the basis or the nutriment, he would say? What fueled this particular outcome, good or bad, positive or not? You know, like to learn, what is it that fuels ignorance? What is it that opens a way for wisdom? What is it that you know, excites greed? What is it that calms it? You know, and we need to run these experiments for ourselves. We can see in the suttas all these descriptions that the Buddha gives, but we should run those experiments for ourselves. You know, if I'm agitated, what helps me calm down? If you know, whatever the mental state might be, what supports it to a healthier state? And really developing those kinds of things. Look for those examples, even if they're very small. And sometimes you just get a view through a crack, but that's enough to lead on to understanding more deeply and seeing, oh, you know, if I orient my mind this way, if I surround myself with these kinds of people, if I read this kind of material, if I listen to this kind of music or chanting or Dhamma talks or other kinds of inspirational things, you know, just it's really this is your laboratory, this life. Everything in it is teaching us. I had this thought, you know, about Ajahn Chah saying, Ajahn Mosquito, you know, the monks, I mean, mosquitoes in Thailand can really be ferocious. Even in Ukiah, I remember being at the outdoor platform at a Abhayagiri. I opened my eyes and I saw Ajahn Pasano's arm like with 8 mosquitoes on it, and he's just sitting there like a stone. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, wow, that's cool. I want to be covered in netting, you know. I want my glove, my little pop-up, you know. But you know, it's like whatever it is. So Ajahn Mosquito, you know, Ajahn Trump. Oh, I saw that shiver. I know, I'm not supposed to be political. But whatever it is, you know, what we can learn from it. We can learn about our own mind. What am I reacting to? When am I pushing away? When am I using a view that I have to alienate? myself towards others? When am I developing aversion? And how can I develop loving kindness? And how can I have healthy boundaries around that? This is something Mayura was talking to me about. Hold on, Daniel. This is something Mayura was talking about the other day. It's something that comes out of the Jewish tradition, that there are these pairs of things, and one of these pairs is kindness and boundaries. And, I usually pair kindness and wisdom as a way to have the proper orientation and protection, and yet the heart being open and ready. But this idea of kindness and boundaries, I like it. It's like this is where the wisdom faculty is engaged, of course, but also just working with that. What is that like? When we find that balance, and so often in life we're trying to maintain or gain balance. And that it's okay to not be in balance. Hopefully over time with development of our skills, the balance doesn't become too wild. It's just a little wobble. But it's never really quite fully, balance doesn't stay on a point. It always has that wobble. Because one way of speaking or acting might be in balance in one situation, but in the next one you have to adjust it a bit because it's not the same situation. So this is our laboratory. This is what we're learning, developing the skill, developing the wholesome patterns, the habits that are going to help the mind become still and happy, relaxed and open, and ready for wisdom to arise. And then when wisdom arises, we know it, and we see how we can solidify that and encourage it, take it into the meditation further and deepen that wisdom, and let it really mature in us. Daniel?
You used the word Achan triumphant. It reminded me of this anecdote of, I don't know if you remember Nancy's house in Rockridge. You went there to see it.
Yeah,
years ago.
I remember.
Well, somehow spiritual teachers often stay there, and this one time, through me, this Tibetan Lama stayed there because he arrived in town and he didn't have a place to stay.
Mm-hmm.
New in town. So the next day we're sitting like a living room like this, couches. I'm on the couch, the Lama was next to me, and we were all reciting like Rumi poetry and stuff. So I read in Rumi and Hafiz, where it's the friend, the beloved, for the word for God, or the open, or whatever. So I read a Rumi poem with all that stuff in it, and the Lama's next to me, and he just starts chuckling, and he goes, "You passed me on the thing." He goes, "Very good, Daniel, but I'd like you to read that Rumi poem again, and every place it says the beloved or the friend, I want you to say George Bush." And I did it, and he was laughing. He was a happy month, but I was sweating. I mean, that was extremely hard to do. And nowadays, George Bush seems mild.
Oh, yeah.
But it's a good practice.
Yeah.
In the Dhammapada 15, happiness, it starts off, and I'll paraphrase, but we dwell in happiness amongst those who hate.
Yeah.
And that's the main thing that I've been kind of sitting with, how do you realize that? How do you live with that? Seeing these results, living with these feelings, and living with this response. So,
yeah. And we dwell in peace among those who are violent. It
Mm-hmm.
goes on and on,
Yeah.
how do we do that? It takes practice. It takes commitment. It takes wisdom, because to really, really get that there's no benefit, only suffering comes from hatred. Only suffering comes from aversion and any kind of meanness. It's like, we do need the boundaries to know, like when it's appropriate to engage, when it isn't, when it's appropriate to remove ourselves from a situation, and like really, really working with that, but always reminding ourselves that even if we think, oh, this is now the way that you're supposed to act, or the way people are acting, to be really clear that going along with that is not going to bring good results. It's only going to bring more suffering. Responding in kind, not kind, doesn't work. Yeah. Yes, Oliver.
The part in the book that I remember is Ajahn Brahm talks about this, the monastics and the similarity that everybody's shaven heads, they have the same robe, the same, the bowl that you go out and the way that he talks about this is a way of letting go of the five senses. And the one that he refers to is, the one on the body where, we get a look at how the body isn't that pleasant. How could you possibly, be infatuated with the body? And the part of that happened for me when I read that is, of course, because the monastics are looking the same. Mm-hmm. When I look around this room, we are all different. Our color of our hair, the clothes we wear, the nail polish is a different color, whatever it is.
The jewelry.
The jewelry, exactly. So I liked that part of the book because I have a difficulty with that. Because I may not like the color of your nail polish. And I know what that feels like. It develops into like, I don't like you.
Yeah.
I don't like you.
I don't trust you.
Exactly. It goes on.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that he said the monastics are all looking the same. And so what I see happens is it's all these differences that is difficult for myself and most of us. And so he does say also the monastic life is the best life. I mean, in so many words, he says that. So the householders, I realize this is what we deal with, all these differences. Mm-hmm. And as we know, it extends from just a minor thing to the color of your hair to something atrocious. But actually after reading it, that did help me because the Ajahn Brahm talks about letting go of the body and the techniques of that, even to the extent of sometimes he talks about opening up, being present for the opening of a dead body and looking inside, etc., etc. Yeah. But what it said to me is I can then also look at the world that I live in, which is the householder, and that these differences I can start to let go of too.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, letting go of the khandhas.
Yes,
letting go
that's
of
what he
these.
Said, yeah.
Yeah, these aspects that we think of as ourselves.
Yeah.
And then it's really easy to see if we're noticing what someone else looks like, or we're noticing what this body is coming to look like, and we like it or we don't like it. And then those are really in your face kinds of likes and dislikes. And then when you see like, oh, I'm actually passing judgment on this person by the way they look.
Yeah.
This is really good teaching. It's like, no. Or even the way if someone's harsh with you, or someone's disrespectful in some way, if you're able to get to know them better, maybe you can understand where that comes from, and maybe there's some empathy, some understanding that can grow out of it. or you just recognize, I don't want to engage with that person around that kind of like situation. It's not healthy, it's not appropriate, or it's not safe. It's okay to have those boundaries. But can we look past all these differences that we perceive? The Buddha talks about being aware of diversity and letting go of that diversity, and he's also, I've talked how many times about the Visaita Sutta, where he identifies all these different things that we distinguish, ourselves and each other based on, that are meaningless. They have nothing to do with awakening. And to just really reflecting on that, because that impulse to like or dislike the color of someone's nail polish, and then, blow that out to think about them in a certain way, that impulse is conditioned. You don't even have to really take responsibility for that. You just have to handle it and know that this isn't the way to think about people or other living beings. Think about how we all suffer. Think about how we're all going to die. Think about how we all get sick. We all age. If we really see that commonality, we can let go of all those meaningless differences and look after each other.
So all that said, but he regularly makes the distinction not to hang out with fools.
Yes, well, that's the boundaries part.
Yeah, okay.
We don't want to pick up bad behavior. We're so impressionable. We really are.
Uh-huh.
We don't want to pick up bad behavior. We don't, as the Buddha said, you hang out with people who are doing bad things. Even if you're not doing bad things, you're going to get seen as doing bad things. You're going to be painted with the same brush.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to do that. And you don't want to encourage bad behavior. So those are very important distinctions. But how we feel about that. We don't have to pull away with aversion. We can just pull away because it's the right thing to do.
Last Sunday, Elizabeth, Lori, and I, we drove up to Abhayagiri Katina. And on the way up in the car, we had this great conversation about practice. And we were all like, wow, how often do you get to have this kind of conversation? The subtleties of practice. So the Sangha. So that in there, for example, if I may sort of quote Elizabeth,
I don't know.
you were mentioning the aspect of just kind of, just resting in awareness, that kind of bit. And then, but a fascinating bit in that little, in the Ajahn Chah section you just read, I'm very interested in action, like right effort, which has been a big discussion. Because on the one hand, there is just the awareness. On the other hand, maybe we're not quite there, and we're doing, in practice, we're doing little things. So he says in there, it's just fascinating, take the coolness to where the heat is. And so when you're in there, cool the mind. Well, that's something you're doing. So I'm like, well, what does that action mean? What does cool the mind mean? It's fascinating.
Well, what do you do when it's hot? And
And
how do
letting
you
go is a
move
big
to
part of
cooling?
that. And,
Letting go is part of it. Bringing in cooling effects, like wisdom. There's this heat here. What is it that I want? What is it that I want to get rid of?
And I let Ajahn Amaroff and others use incline the mind. I like that. It's an action, but it's very subtle, and it's like you're kind of leaning there.
Guiding the mind. I mean, the Buddha was very proactive. It's not just, being aware of everything that floats through. We have to be discerning. And I know Ajahn Nyanako, I was listening to a talk of his where he was emphasizing the goal here isn't just to stop the mind. The goal here is to use thought in an important, constructive way to really train the mind. Yes. Eve.
So I've been trying to formulate a question. about what I'm struggling with, and I'm realizing that there's some piece here that seems to be separate from being able to exercise discernment, and that is when, and this is in reaction to the outcome of the election, when something has happened and you are in a state, it's not just a mental state, it's a state of probably your entire nervous system.
Yeah.
That is, something, maybe a combination or includes some of the following, like shock, a feeling of unsafety, overwhelm, and that I think when I'm affected by that kind of overall state of the nervous system, my mind just my thoughts are just a reflection. They're an outgrowth of that state. And so if I'm trying too hard to try to work with my thoughts, I'm actually not getting to the root of the matter. And so I wondered if you could speak to that when it's something more around the nervous system, and as an organism you're experiencing a feeling of unsafety or overwhelm, or maybe even dread.
Even what?
Dread.
Dread. Yeah. So
Yeah.
the thing to do is to go to the body, to be present with the body. Take time to sit down and feel where that feeling, where the emotion is really presenting itself most strongly in the body. If it's in the gut, put your attention there. If it's in the heart area, put your attention there, or wherever it is. And really stay present with it, observing it change. A lot of times the encouragement is to ask questions about it. As soon as we ask questions about a feeling we're having or a mental state or a physical, like where the emotions are showing up, we're observing it. We're establishing mindfulness because we have to observe it to answer those questions.
Yeah.
And that's really helpful because we start to recognize that there's a part of the mind that isn't caught up in this. It's not in panic. It's not in fear. It's not in dread. It's not in, this whole nervous system reaction. Instead, it's a solid space where we're observing from. And once we can do that, we can see there's this feeling, this reaction. This isn't filling the entire screen of my experience. There's space around it. That's where we start to gain ground, where we start to settle. And we can observe this settling process. We can see it happen. And then there are appropriate times to bring in wisdom, knowing, okay, this is the reality and I can't do anything to change it. And that's how it is. So I have to be okay with that. And one of the ways that we help our system adjust to the reality is to listen to things that are hopeful, uplifting, positive, and stay away from the rest of it. Sense restraint, like monitored. I mean, someone said to me, I can't listen to NPR anymore. This is our contractor. He's a big, a little bit rough in some ways guy, but when he's doing his construction work, he's listening to NPR all the time. I'm like, this is my kind of contractor, And I get what he's saying, like now it's all going to be about the drama of the political scene, and I don't want to hear that every day, every minute. So shut it off. This is what we need to do to take care of the mind.
So you want to be doing what you can not to continue to subject your nervous system.
Yes.
Yes. feeds that state or keeps it going.
Yeah, that cause and effect, whatever's causing that. But see, there's a real skill that needs to be developed and discernment around. We don't want to shove things under the rug. If we suppress,
Yeah.
that's just going to come out in funny ways later. It doesn't heal.
Mm-hmm.
It's like not washing the wound and covering it up. We can't. That doesn't work. So we need to be able to really be present with what's happening in our system, in order for it to heal, in order for it to really calm down. And once it's gotten sufficient care, then we can, and we don't want to, if whatever caused that heat or whatever caused that wounding, we don't want to keep wounding it. We set that aside. Especially, there's nothing we can do. If we're caught in a hurricane, and we're having to, or walk out of a mountain with just what we can carry from a fire or whatever, then we've got something we have to do, and maybe we can't deal with the emotions that are arising in that moment. But in this, so much of it's just mental. Nothing has really changed in your life since Tuesday. And we have to remember that. And the fear of what might change, well, we don't know. We can't predict. I mean, God knows this is an unpredictable place we're in, And that doesn't mean that we don't care about it or don't take it seriously, but we don't have to take it at that gut level.
Yeah, and I also think you're saying don't ignore the way the body is responding.
No, definitely not. We want to be present with the body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there doesn't seem to be a lot of guidance or support in the culture overall for being able to. It seems like there's a lot of people that are doom. They're sort of like feeding the doom, and then there are others who are saying, "Oh, but no, it's going to be fine." But I don't feel like there's much support for just being with this kind of state that I was describing.
Right.
It seems like we're kind of we need to sort of find ways to remember that that's important.
Yes.
And
Yes.
not just be on the level of the mind and the thoughts.
Yes, and we can do this in various ways. There are some methods, like the book that came out, in the 80s or 90s, Focusing. We can.
Oh yeah, Eugene Junlin. Yeah.
Yeah, use that process.
Yeah.
Feeding Your Demons from Lama Tsultrim Leone is another process we can use. We can work with a therapist or a counselor on that. Just how to stay present. They've got so many. We want to pull away from it. We want to take an exit route. We want to indulge in eating or sleeping or having sex or all those things that are cut off for monastics. You can't just do those things when you want to, or maybe ever. But as ordinary lay people, you also need to not use whatever our common exit routes are, because then we're suppressing again or ignoring, and it doesn't help. It doesn't work. But then we don't want to. Also, it's important not to increase it, not to think in ways that build up that intensity in the nervous system.
Yeah, right. That's okay. That's very helpful. Like I think I'm feeding it by thinking things.
Yeah.
That keep it going.
Yeah, and when we get together with friends, there are a lot of things we can do besides talk about this. Yeah. Yeah. Sure, you're welcome.
Yeah, I've been. Thank you for raising that because I had the same reaction: panic, doomsday, fear. I'm Jewish, so like Hitler. This is how Hitler started. But I've also been thinking a lot about our biology, our nervous system's survival impulses, which were definitely very much triggered initially with the fear. But I've also been thinking about how much our mind, I've come to really appreciate that our mind also has an important role in our survival.
Oh, yeah.
And so I've been appreciating, instead of saying, oh, mind, don't go there, it's like, oh, thank you for also being there to support me. I mean, the mind is like so amazing because we can really mess ourselves around. But I also really want to kind of embrace the fact that I have a mind that can think and protect me and try to protect me. So I don't want to leave that out as the mind is one thing and our body is another. The mind is all part of our biology, really, and it's here for our survival, just like the rest of our body is. And just really, I've come to embrace all those things recently. Really kind of welcome them and be grateful, and then put them aside.
Yeah, I'd like to make one distinction, if you don't mind. The mind is one thing and the body is another, but what you're saying about that connection is true, and that the mind also is very affected by the body and vice versa, obviously. And so the reason it's important to realize that the mind is separate from the body is because the body's going to die, the mind's going to continue. And yes, the mind is conditioned throughout evolution and through all kinds of ways to help protect us. And the mind is what we can use to awaken. So it's like all of those things. So appreciating that fact is important, and recognizing that we have this faculty of wisdom that we can guide the chitta, guide the mind to seeing what's really important and what isn't, and what we really can do to make things better and what doesn't work. And that's so important. So it's true, I mean, appreciating the benefits of the mind. And, in a way, you can take that same experience and appreciate our neighbors, no matter what they believe or what they've chosen. Appreciate the goodness in people, even when they're, sometimes rude or disrespectful or whatever, to try to recognize that there is not just one flavor here. And we can really appreciate the good. And Buddha has, there are suttas like this where he says, oh, if a person's doing this, this, and this, and you can easily see there's one good thing and two bad things. He said they're praiseworthy on this count and blameworthy on that count, and he goes through all the different permutations, but that idea that the Dhamma is clear about what's wholesome and unwholesome. And the part you're saying is, I don't want to just blame the mind for its reactions, because there's a wholesome aspect to it, and that's important. That's good. And then just to be clear about, okay, the unwholesome bits where my mind's going too far, where it's obsessing, where it's revving up the emotions in a way, bringing more heat. How can I help the mind bring more coolness? Yeah, without suppressing. It's a very challenging and very fascinating experience, this human life. And there's so much potential in it. And it's still available to us until our last breath. And then the mind goes on with whatever we've equipped it with. So let's equip it up good. It's like, fill up the coffers there in the mind, the part that goes with you, that goes on, like really, really make it work. Okay, we have a little more time.
Could I just say a real quick thing? This was actually in response to Daniel. I just have this favorite quote, and I'm not sure exactly which sutta it's from. I think it might be Two Kinds of Thought, one that's following it about whatever one frequently thinks or ponders upon will become the inclination of their mind. And I try to use that when I'm kind of stuck in a rut.
Yeah.
Which I think is going to be really prevalent right now, because we just are in such a state of shock.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing that happens that we're all very familiar with is the more we focus on the bad behavior of someone else, or the more we focus on someone and really set them up as an enemy, the more we become like them. Because our minds are in that same gutter, and we don't want that. We got to see bigger than that, and more generously than that. And we still know what's wrong is wrong, but not, like not getting down in the same muck. And we can't help people if we're in the same sand either. We've got to be out on solid ground, and we can help people out. Any more comments or questions? Could somebody put some light on?
I can do that.
It's like
More enlightenment.
more enlightenment, please.
Let there be light.
Yeah, thank you, Kiri.
Yeah, we're not used to the clock.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Maybe just an appreciation. I just really enjoyed what you had to say there in response to Eve's question. And I haven't done it before, but these are recorded, so
Yes.
you may want to hear that again and
Yep.
do that again.
It'll be on the Karuna Buddhist PRI YouTube channel probably soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And did you get all the members so that you can now watch one of your videos without?
It's true, and Ajahn Nisabo sent us the instructions for removing the ads, and I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. If there's a volunteer who wants to do that, we could make that happen. So it should be possible.
I remember the time I tried to do a guided meditation.
Oh, it's so
and like
maddening.
8 minutes in, all of a sudden there was a loud commercial.
so awful. Yeah, and I know that if the user purchases the YouTube thing, then they don't have those. If you upgrade to like buying it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
But-
pay $13 a month or whatever.
And before we had 1,000 subscribers, we looked into trying to remove the ads, and we couldn't. And then someone told us that not only do you have to have 1,000 subscribers, but there was something else you needed to have, and so we didn't get around circle back to try to cull those out. But we'll see if we can.
I'm thinking about the word motivations, intentions. Maybe you could have a comment when I say so. After the election, I was very happily surprised. It just felt like the fruit of 40 years of practice. That I had one day of hell, and several other people I know were in this. One day of hell, and then the next day, it was just this it was motivational.
Yeah.
Time to get to work. Some people I know were like, time to do my life's work. For me, it was a little more issue specific, like, okay, I need to get to work on climate change, women's reproductive rights, blah, blah, blah. But there was this intention, motivation, something that just arose out of this. And I didn't dwell in the shit for more than one day. It was
Great.
really cool.
Great. Yes. Yeah, I was pretty surprised that my mind was very calm, went to bed after finding out, and just slept. Certainly not because I liked the results, but because I didn't have to wonder anymore. And then we do see what we can do. Then we see the importance. There was a lovely article in the Atlantic the next morning about what we can do, and and I think coming back to Ajahn Brahm's book, the way he describes right intention, kindness, gentleness, and letting go. If we really make that what surrounds all of our thinking and action, that's huge. If that's the sort of atmosphere that we hold, kindness, gentleness, and letting go. And of course, like I keep saying, where wisdom also has to be there all the time, those proper boundaries, that discernment of right and wrong. It's not like we're covering it over as if nothing's, out of place. We live in samsara. There's always this mixture of dark and light, wholesome and unwholesome. And we are able to purify our own minds and our own environments and our own sphere of influence. And it's true, whenever there's some kind of problem, really significant issue that arises, whether it's a natural disaster or a conflict, take any scale, there's always these examples of people rising above it. Always people who are going out of their way to help others, and this is where a lot of joy and real satisfaction comes. The motivation, the determination. Yeah. Okay, so thank you all for your practice. It's really wonderful to be together, and to be together across all distances and time too. The recording will go up.